We've received quite a bit of interest in my free to be workshop, so to that effect, beneath this video is a link that will give you a description for the workshop, and we've also included a special discount. So if that's something you would be interested in, I would invite you to click that link, and I hope that you would find the course to be quite beneficial. As a therapist, when I was talking with individuals who would bring all sorts of strains and tensions into my office, I would remind myself that these are individuals who have had many experiences that have worn them down to the point where they wonder, am I any good? Can I come to terms with some of the mistakes that I've made? Can I come to terms with some of the harsh and difficult emotions that are a result of some of the experiences I've had with difficult individuals? And so one of the things when I would hear those stories is I would want to take them back to day one in their lives. And I would want to remind these individuals who felt troubled and confused that you're still the same person as an adult as you were on day one in your life. Now, on day one, things are not terribly complex yet. On day one in your life, there were a couple of primary truths that were simply evident. At least I certainly hope they were. One is that you had value. Just by virtue of your existence, by virtue of you showing up, your worth, your value was indisputable. And then second, right along with that, you were meant to be loved. And inevitably, most people, when they're born, they're cuddled, they're held tenderly, they're taken care of, they're nurtured. You had value on the day of your birth. You were made to be loved on the day that you were born. Now, as most of us go by with our weeks and months and years and decades of many, many experiences, we can encounter a lot of individuals in our lives who forget those day one truths. And in fact, what we have is we have all sorts of strains and difficulties when people treat you in ways that are inconsistent with those two truths. Now, I know that every one of us, you included, me included, can say, oh yeah, I've had a lot of people in my life who didn't treat me as a valuable individual, and they certainly didn't know how to love. But we were able to work through it and get to a point of understanding that just because someone else is troubled doesn't mean that it has to completely take over our truth, and we can learn how to come up with our own coping skills and mechanisms and habits and priorities that keep us consistent with those day one truths. Narcissists, however, have not come to terms with their day one truths. Instead, because they've been exposed to all sorts of messages that contradict their value and their lovability, they've learned that they can't really trust the world in front of them, and they've developed a shell of falseness. They've developed a shell of cynicism around themselves. Narcissists, because of experiences in their world, have decided, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stay in my me first mentality. Somebody's got to take care of me. Somebody's got to pay attention to me, and I'm going to be the chairman of that committee. And they take that kind of thinking way too far, to the extent that they remain stuck in a toddler-like me first kind of mentality. They don't want to come to terms with the needs and feelings of other individuals, because you see, narcissists have developed pervasive fears. They have a thick layer of defensiveness because they think, well, I'm not real sure if other individuals really do care about me, or I'm not real sure if I make mistakes, or if I say things one way as opposed to another, that I'm going to be deemed as being reasonable. They never learned how to manage difficulties or differences or tensions or conflicts very well. Anger was not addressed well at all. They had plenty of angry individuals in their lives. They themselves developed anger, whether they learned how to hide it or it came out in explosive kinds of ways. They began realizing, at least in their world, there are inferior positions, there are superior positions, and they tried desperately to figure out how not to be deemed as inferior because they knew there was a grading system out there. And as a result, they had to figure out, well, how do I get on the high end of that grading system? Along the way, they never did really learn how to delve into the feelings and the needs and the perceptions of other individuals because they were so worried about their own relative standing with people around them. Like I say, they concluded that the world is a hostile place and they simply couldn't afford to be open. They couldn't afford to trust. As a result, they concocted a false self that they had to live behind, thinking, I don't really want people to know who I am. In fact, I'm kind of afraid for me to even explore who I am because, you see, I think there are people in my world who are going to remind me I don't measure up, and I simply don't want that to happen. Now, interestingly, there's a very powerful thinking pattern that tends to go along with this false self and this trying to figure out how to maneuver around the demands and the non-trustworthiness of other individuals. And the thinking pattern is what I refer to as imperative thinking. You know that you have imperative thinking when you think in terms of commands. There's a very fixed formula as to how things are supposed to be. And there are certain words that I call the imperative words. You must, you have to, you should, you're supposed to, you've got to, you'd better. Anything that more or less says there's a fixed way of doing things and you'd better do this, and then you'll be considered to be worthy and lovable. And narcissists have developed a conflicted way of responding to imperative thinking. On one hand, they thought, well, I guess there's some people that I have to live according to my imperatives with, and so they try to figure out how to beat the system. But then there are other times it's like, well, what I want to do is I want to be the one that pronounces imperatives. You're not going to tell me who I'm supposed to be, but if I can tell you who you're supposed to be, then I win. And so they can have this mentality that says, well, I know people want me to conform, but I don't want to do it, but I want to make others conform. I know they don't want to do it, but I'm going to make that happen anyway. And this explains why they can go deeper and deeper into certain behaviors, like they become very forceful, even though in their lives they may be reckless, or it may be that they insist upon your conformity, even though they refuse to conform to other people's norms. They like to give the impression that they're trustworthy. And when I say give the impression, it means they lie. They like to give the impression that they're trustworthy, even though behind the scenes they may lie and themselves not be trustworthy. They can be secretive. They can have lots of anger when things don't go their way. Narcissists have decided that I must have things go my way. I don't want you getting into my business. And as a result, they turn into master manipulators. Their exterior does not match their interior. They become opportunists. Life to them becomes one transaction after another, hopefully meant to give them an advantage and keep them away from disadvantaged positions. So you can see that these are very conflicted individuals. And like I say, every one of us has had times when we've encountered people that are not trustworthy and they have their imperatives, and sometimes we want to have our imperatives in reverse. But narcissists, like I say, they take it way too far. They want other individuals to be in their subordination. They become angry in a quest for power. Like I say, they lie easily. They project shame onto other individuals because they themselves don't know how to deal with shame, but shame is the language that they engage with other individuals with. They refuse to explore their own pain and confusion beyond looking for people to blame. Now, one of the things that's so necessary to break through all of this is to go back and remind yourself of those day one truths. You're valuable and worthy, and you deserve to be loved and to live in love. And I'm hoping that as you remind yourself those things about you are still true, I'm hoping that what you'll do, instead of going into this false concoction of what you're supposed to be and constantly worrying about what other people are going to proclaim about you, I'm hoping you can decide, I want to have the freedom to discover my worth. and value, and I want to have the freedom to understand what it means to live as a loving person. If other people would like to join me in that, I would be more than happy for that to happen. And I'm hoping that instead of you living behind this false posturing and trying to figure out, who's going to be with you and who's not, I'm hoping there's going to be a mindset that says, when you're in my presence, we're going to always keep those core truths in mind. I want to build my lifestyle habits. I want to build my work ethic. I want to build my family mannerism around those day one truths that says each of us in this place is worthy and valuable. Each of us in this place is made for love. How can we get there? And it has so many different ramifications for your lifestyle habits. Now, I know I'm kind of giving you some broad overview here, but I'm hoping that as you remind yourself, so much of the narcissist way of life is posturing, trying to figure out how to deal with people who lost sight of the day one truths, and they themselves lost sight of their day one truths. I'm hoping you can see that that's what's so dysfunctional about the false self. Let's go back and rediscover and reconnect with your true self, the part of you that's worthy and valuable and lovable. I'm hoping that's a mindset that you can hold on to and lean into. I know that narcissist is not going to, they may say they've got it figured out, but they don't. They're not going to join you in that true, authentic effort. Make that central to what you are. And in doing so, let's shed all of the shame and the defenses and the demands and the imperatives and the double standards that go along with the false self. Let's go back and figure out what it truly means to be the real you. Day one truth. I hope that videos such as this can give you some good things to think about and some a mindset that you can draw upon as you are on your growth trajectory. I hope that as you watch these videos in a cumulative way, it has a helpful therapeutic impact on you. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. We'll keep more coming toward you. Likewise, you know that I've been sponsored for years by people at BetterHelp.com. I know that when you're trying to figure these kind of things out, it can be most helpful to have a therapist to assist you in the effort. We have the people at BetterHelp. There's a link below that will take you to their website. Ever since the pandemic, we've discovered that online therapy can be very effective. It's affordable, it's accessible, it's effective. And so if you have that need, please seek out the help that you have, that you would have, that you could need, easy for me to say. There's a link below that will take you to that. Likewise, I have my therapeutic courses, and each course has multiple videos, like 25 or more. I put a lot of work into it. It's like signing up for an online course. And each video has written documents with guided questions. We have Ready, Set, Connect about making good connection skills, Free to Be about finding yourself despite those controllers, This Is Me about establishing your boundaries. We also have my webinars, which are set up in a very different kind of format. They're on the website. We have many articles on our website along with my podcast, the Surviving Narcissism podcast. We have books, plenty of resources. Okay, on day one, you had worth and value. You were a lovable individual. Narcissists lost sight of that because of many experiences and the baggage that piled up in their life. You've had plenty of baggage piled up perhaps in your life, but I'm hoping you can go back and get centered on the things that matter most. Live inside your value, live as a loving individual, and let that be your guide with your many day-to-day kind of decisions and priorities. And in doing so, I hope it positions you to be a person of steadiness and a person of peace.